What's up, family? This is Winford here. Listen, I am here for this week's What Does the Bible Say About Money? This week, we're going to tackle one of the most used and probably misused passages when it comes to money. Yes, I'm talking about Malachi 3 and 10. If you've been in church anytime, for any length of time, you have probably heard it used and quoted. It says, "Will a man rob God? You have robbed me in tithe and in offering. Prove me now and see, will I open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a window blessing that you won't have room enough to receive. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there would be meat in my house." That's another version. It says, "And see, will I pour you out, open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you won't have room enough to receive." So if you've got room, that means you still got a tithe. I'm making a joke of that last part, but I'm sure you have heard something like that or a variation of that. But today I want to talk about, what does the Bible really say? What is the Bible, the text, saying, and what does that mean that God has to say about money? So, just a little context. The book of Malachi is actually written to priests. It's written to the priest, and the context of this particular passage, is written to the priest. And what the prophet is doing is he is actually talking to priests who have taken the tithe. So back then, again, they didn't have dollars or coins or cryptocurrency. But what they had was, they had animals, they have livestock, they have produce from the trees, they had grain that they grew, they had corn. So they would bring a portion of that to the priest. And the priest's responsibility was to take a portion of that and offer it as sacrifice for the people. And another portion they were supposed to live off of. However, what some of the priests were doing, or what the priests were doing at that time, was they were not using it for its appropriate need. Some were selling it, some were profiting from it, some were doing other things that God had not called them to do. And so the prophet steps in and, in a word of rebuke, says to them that you are not doing with this tithe, with this 10%, this amount that God's people are giving to you, you are not doing what you are supposed to do with it. And so therefore, then if you've been in church, he'll tell you, if you don't do it, and approve me now, and see if you don't, go and talk about you've been cursed with the curse because you have not given your tithe. That's where we come into all of that. So what does the Bible have to say? What does that mean for us, for you and I? If we're not priests, well, first of all, let me say that once you are a believer in Jesus Christ, you technically are a priest. Because a priest, a part of the role of the priest is, again, to go to God on behalf of the people. Today, we will call that something like intercession, but I'm not here to get into that. But what I want to say is, because that passage is directed at priests, specifically in the function, it would be more like him talking to somebody like me, who's a pastor, who is not doing well, who is not doing good by the money that people are given to my church, who are given to myself. So it would be more similar to that. So that's not necessarily directly speaking to you. However, the principle can still be used or counted in something in the way that we deal with money, because what this Bible is really teaching us is for those of us who are what I would call it New Testament believers, it is talking to you about the principle still of management. That when God gives us money, that it is appropriate, it is faithful. In order to be faithful, you have to do well with it, that you can't splurge it. You're not supposed to use God's money, and all money belongs to God. You're not supposed to be using it to do things, to manipulate people, to harm people, to do things to try to harm creation. But you want to make sure that what you're doing, you're using it well, and that you're using it as best you can for the flourishing of the people. But that's not, the text is about a tithe. So Winfred, does this mean I have to tithe? Well, we've dealt with that in other videos already, but a short synopsis is you should give. You absolutely should give. You should give to people. You should give to places. You should give to your church if you belong to a church. But God is not commanding us to give 10%. As this text is typically used to try to say, see, God has said you still have to tithe. That's not what this text is saying. This text is not even really talking about that. This is talking about the money that was given to the priest so that the priest could live off of and offer sacrifices for. So no, it's not saying you have to give 10%, but it's saying that you should, that whatever God is giving you, manage it well as a priest of God. Manage it well, because what we've learned before in previous videos is that when we manage it well, that's when God begins to allow our money to multiply. So it's not, and that's just not the 10, that's not the 90, that's all of it, because all 100% belongs to God. So how do we do that? Again, we talked about it. 10% give, 20% save. We talked about 40% use to pay bills, and 30% to spend as a rule. Now, depending on where you are, that would change. We talked about in another video. So I hope that helps you. I hope that makes it more practical for you. I hope it releases you from from the guilt of feeling like that God is against them because they're not giving their 10%. Because again, this is about the posture of your heart. And if you desire to give the 10% and you earnestly desire to give it and cannot, God does honor that. And we know that giving is not just about money, but it is time, talent. It is also your treasure. So there are other ways that you could give in addition to giving your money. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Hope this helps. Share it. If you got comments, put them below. I'll see you later.